Well, Joel Klatt's at the Big 12 Media Days as Fox is now presenting their biggest college football games of the year, and Joel Klatt is joining us live, and we love that. Texas, Ohio State headlines it, Ohio State, Michigan as well, Iowa, Iowa State. Speaking of rivalry games, and I've said it this year, is that, listen, I grew up with the Pac-12 and I loved it. And then it didn't exist. And it didn't take me that long to realize, well, if I get USC, Michigan, that's pretty cool. If I get Ohio State, Oregon, I watched that game at Autzen, and I'm like, all right, I'll take that. That beats Cal, Arizona. Notre Dame, USC does feel big. But I can see Lincoln Riley going, okay, so the only three teams that came with us to the Big Ten are Oregon, Washington, and our primary rival into a much better conference. Not to mention the playoff where I could face Georgia and Bama. I get them saying, okay, we'll play you. But it's got to be early, and it's every other year. Are you bothered by that?
Listen, they are doing what everyone does in this sport, which is they make decisions that are in their own self-interest. And I'm not against that, but I am saying that, like, the model is what's broken. Being in a selection-based model for the postseason is going to lead to more of these types of games and rivalries going away. Because what the committee has done during the course of their tenure as in influencing college football through the 14 playoff and even now last year in the 12-team playoff, Colin, is that they have reinforced that it's better to just win than to go play a difficult schedule. They reinforce that time and time again, year in and year out. Therefore, people are going to behave that way. So if you're USC, which has traditionally played one of the more difficult schedules in the country, in fact, they're one of the few schools that, if you look back at all, the last decade or so, they would average more Power 4, Power 5 games than anybody in college football. They would play 11 in a lot of cases. That was far greater than the number of Power 4 or Power 5 schools that the SEC teams were playing. And so, like, when they make this decision, I can't fault them for it. I don't love it, but I can't fault them for it. This would be my argument, would just be, we need to go to an access-based model for the college football playoffs so that we know the avenues of how we can qualify for the playoff spots, which will lead to these games not being as penal, in particular in the non-conference, and we can hopefully see these matchups more often.
Listen, it's Deion Sanders and Belichick now are getting attention to schools that don't get it much in football. Belichick aside, Deion Sanders now doesn't have his son or Travis Hunter. Going forward, what are they this year? What's reasonable to expect? Like, it's nice when your son, who's an NFL quarterback, comes with you. That's a bonus. And I still think Shedeur is going to be a starting NFL quarterback. What are they now, though?
I don't see them taking a huge step back, maybe a small one. So two things. One, they've recruited at a very high level, and they've brought in a couple of quarterbacks. Caden Salter, a quarterback that transferred in from Liberty, I believe it was. And they also got Juju Lewis, who decommitted from USC and is now at Colorado. Like, Deion has done a really great job, whether it's been in the portal or in high school recruiting, to try to reload. They need to continue to get better at the line of scrimmage. The more difficult part for me, and I know this sounds crazy, even more so than replacing Shedeur and Travis, is that league, the Big 12, and I'm here at these spring meetings, if you look at right now what Vegas says about the team that they think is the worst team in the Big 12, the over-under is set at 5.5. If you look at the team that they think is the best team in the Big 12, the over-under is set at 8.5. So you've got basically 14, 15, 16 teams within 3 games of one another. That's what I think is the most difficult part of the Big 12 and why it's so difficult to predict. Could Colorado be a 4-win team? Maybe. Could they be a 9-win team? Maybe. This conference is just so deep and bunched together with a lot of quality programs.
Joel, I think the last couple of years, it's been pretty obvious when I watch Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, and Oregon. These teams at the top of the Big Ten are every bit as good as the SEC, or in Michigan and Ohio State's case, noticeably better. Explain why over 2 years. It probably has a connection to the NIL, but it felt like for years SEC games look different. And it doesn't feel like it the last 2 years. I think my take is I think Penn State's going to play for the Natty against Texas next year. That's how good I think they are. I think they have a top 5-6 quarterback. I think James Franklin's a remarkable recruiter. They got some NIL money. What has been this 2-year shift? Why?
Oh, man. There's a lot of layers to this answer. And I think that you'll love all of them. I really do, Colin. The first layer is the layer that no one wants to talk about and no one wants to bring up, which is now everyone is paying players. And so the dispersion of talent is going to be greater because now it's legal, NIL. Now, take that for what it's worth. That is a sentiment underlying in college football that some conferences were more entrenched in that style of behavior prior to when NIL became legal. Then you get to some of the other layers, which is transfer portal with NIL. What does that do? Well, the SEC, and in particular the best programs in the SEC, can no longer just stockpile talent and keep them as backups and even third stringers at time. If you look at the depth of the roster of like the 2017, 18, 19 LSU's, Bama's, Georgia's, even 2020, 2021, those rosters were insanely talented and deep. But now, Colin, rather than sitting as a backup at Alabama, you can go and be a starter at some other program and make, 6 figures.
Yeah.
And so the talent is not sitting there. They're going all over the country. So the depth of talent now is kind of dispersing across the country. And then what you see is that when that happens, it rewards teams that can play quality football at the line of scrimmage and can maintain the talent and get deep and veteran within their organizations. And that's what Michigan did, and that's what Ohio State did. So in part, it's just kind of the overarching shift of where college football has gone, which has allowed the talent to not get really bogged down in one region. Now all those players are going all over for more opportunity, more starting spots. You're not going to make money if you don't start, so you can't sit as a backup. So those rosters got thin, and then the rosters up north, I think, got a lot better. And you're seeing that late in the season. Think about these games late in the season. And I think 5 years ago, you would have been shocked if you would have seen results like Notre Dame beating Georgia and handling them at the line of scrimmage in a college football playoff game. Ohio State running Tennessee out of the building, not even close, in a college football playoff game. Michigan beating Alabama, not only in a college football playoff game, a national semifinal, but a year later in another bowl game, depleted with all of their starters not playing, beating Alabama again. Illinois beating South Carolina, who we all thought was really on a run late last year. You start looking at this narrative that the SEC has built up over the last few years. And late last year, it started to crumble, which is why I point to that game that we announced today. Texas-Ohio State is a big game for the SEC because they haven't had a real marquee win since, early last year when, who was it? Did Georgia on Clemson early last year. So all of those things I think are fascinating. It was a great question. It really was, but lots of layers to that thing.
Listen, Ohio State, I'm going to wait and see what they are at quarterback. I think they have arguably the two best players in Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Smith. They're unbelievable players. If they played quarterback, they'd be 1-2 next year if they were available. Smith still has a couple of years. So I don't know enough about Ohio State. I just have to watch them. When you lose a quarterback, I mean, they'll be good. I know that. They'll be explosive. Texas, though, is interesting. The downside to Arch Manning is that it puts enormous pressure on Steve Sarkisian. Let's talk a little bit about that. What I've seen from Arch I like, but I haven't seen a lot. I think Drew Aller got so much better at Penn State last year from the previous year. Like, I can see the trajectory. Like, if he gets better, okay, that's an NFL quarterback. What is Arch at this point?
I believe Arch is one of the – I rated him on my show, Colin, as the second best quarterback in college football going into next year. I'm a big believer. Maybe that's Kool-Aid drinking. I'm not sure. But when I watch him play, he threatens every blade of grass on the field with a really strong arm. And he's accurate and smart with it. And he's better throwing the ball down the field than even Quinn Ewers was. And then all of a sudden, in those couple of starts that he got, he flashed this ability to run that I was like, whoa. That looks like Trevor Lawrence. So that's my comp to Arch. I think Arch is a lot of what we saw Trevor Lawrence become at Clemson. Lawrence had a lot of success early. Remember his true freshman year, they led him to a national championship. And I think Arch, the biggest question I have for Arch is not him, actually. It's more about rebuilding that offensive line. They get C.J. Baxter back and healthy. They've recruited and hit the portal incredibly well all over their roster. That is a bona fide top-end team in college football. They should start at number 1 or number 2 in the country. And the question becomes, like, what are they going to be on the offensive line? And if that unit plays well, I think Arch will be in New York. I think that he'll have a huge decision to make, whether he wants to come out and be a top 3 pick in the NFL draft or if he wants to stay at Texas one more year and continue to develop. So I'm pretty high on Arch, and I'm pretty high on Texas.
Okay, this is only 1 minute left. Lincoln Riley had a transfer thing, and it didn't work because the chemistry, and Brian Kelly at LSU had a lot of transfers, and it didn't work, and Deion did a lot of transfers. Belichick goes to Carolina. It's a lot of transfers. In 1 minute, I don't know if the chemistry, you can do that in a college campus. What are they going to look like?
I have no idea. I think it's a huge question, and it's boom or bust when you go in the transfer portal that heavy. We've seen teams succeed like Indiana, and we've seen teams fail like Florida State. You know, so like trying to predict what's going to happen with Bill Belichick in North Carolina is a fool's errand. They could be an 8-win team. They could be a 2-win team. I have no idea what to expect from the Tar Heels.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way because I watched Lincoln do it with Caleb Williams. And in the end, it was just a bunch of disparate parts. And I watched Brian Kelly do it and hit and miss. And, Colorado, considering how bad they were.
The quarterback is the biggest piece. Colorado did. They had Shador. Caleb Williams, they had that. Curtis Rourke at Indiana. They had Curtis Rourke. He played well. So, that's what allows it to succeed. If you don't have that guy at quarterback, boy, watch out. And that's what Florida State didn't have. They didn't hit at quarterback. So, all of a sudden, they're a 2-win team after starting in the top 10.
So notable Fox college football games with Joel Klatt today. Texas, Auburn, a headliner. Auburn at Baylor is going to be unbelievable. Iowa, Iowa State, the Ducks at Northwestern, Ohio State, Michigan, and Mountain West and Big Ten Championship. All sorts of good stuff. Joel, as always, from the Big 12 Media Days, great seeing you.
Always good to see you. Have a good one, bud.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoy that clip, make sure you click subscribe somewhere down here. From game highlights to exclusive interviews and rankings, we've got everything you need as a college football fan right here, College Football on Fox.